Hi, this is Anna Haferman, and today I want to show how to use the Brother Knitleader with the Silver Reed LK150, and this is really easy to do. It doesn't require any special tools or carpentry, just a couple of household items that you may already have. So, and just minutes to do it. So, and it works great and it's easy. So, before I do that, I want to thank everyone who donated to the Buy Me a Coffee link. Your donations really do help me to make more videos, so I appreciate that and thank you. So the Knitleader is a charting device, which means you draw a pattern on this sheet, this Mylar sheet, and I use some washable markers. And then according to the measurements of your swatch, which you get a stitch gauge. It comes with several stitch gauges in this tube, and you measure the rows as well and put that in there. And I'm not going to go into how to use the Knitleader really. I'm more just showing how to set it up and what you need to do. So this was originally made for the metal bed machines, and you could use the same one for either your standard gauge or your bulky gauge. And there were different scales that came with the standard gauge and the bulky gauge. So that's the bulky gauge one, and that's the standard gauge one. The bulky scales came with the bulky knitting machine, and the standard gauge ones came with the Knitleader itself. So, and you would draw that pattern in full size. Now this pattern I drew in half scale, and I'm going to get to that. So to set it up, all that really needs to happen is this thing needs to be in the right place for the row counter tripper on your carriage to trip it as it goes by, and then it advances that. So that's normally these have brackets that fit in here, and then you those fit in the machine as well, so it stays in place. But for the LK150 we don't have brackets, so we just have to get this in the correct place, and it just has to be a certain height up, and it has to be back a little bit and a certain height. So, and it's best if it's stable. So I messed around with a few things, but eventually what I found worked was 4 packs of playing cards. I got these at Dollar Tree, and then this was some non-slip shelf liner. This is that spongy grippy stuff that works for so many different things. And then I just cut some strips and wrapped them around the cards and stuck them under this, so they weren't under here, but just so I had them in. So now the Knitleader is at the right height and it's not moving, and then all I have to do is make sure it's far enough back and not too close and just in the right place there, and that you just trial and error. It's pretty easy to do. So then when I go across, it's hitting it every row. So when you use this with the standard gauge machine, you draw your pattern full size, use these stitch scales, and you knit a swatch that is 40 by 60 stitches and rows. So that was what this one was. This ended up huge, and measuring it didn't fit in the parameters either for the row scale or the stitch scales. It only goes up to 180 millimeters, or the rows, which only goes up to 20. So you need to knit a bulky swatch, which is 20 by 30. So then I measure this one, and this was 105 So I get the 105 scale. This is still a standard gauge scale, and then it was, I think, 112, and so I put those numbers in there. But this would make, I need to draw the pattern in half scale if I do that. Normally on the bulky machine, you draw your pattern full size, and because you use the bulky scale, which is this one, and it goes in there. I'm just putting it up here so you can see them both. So it's the same scale, just the needles, you have half as many on the bulky in the same place. So, but when you use the bulky machine with the Knitleader, it has a second tripper that trips this. So the row counter tripper trips it once, and in the same pass, the next, the other tripper trips it a second time. So it hits it twice per row. So if you want to do your pattern full scale, you would use the bulky scale, and you would do the 20 by 30 swatch and do your measurements, and then you have to figure out a way to get the row counter to trip twice per row. Well, the row counter trip once. You want this to trip twice each time. So it's only tripping once, so you could just do it with your hand each time, but that's probably not going to work. Or you could find something that would trip it. So I found these little things, also at Dollar Tree, and these are like removable hooks that stick on, and they stay on pretty well, and they won't come off until you pull them off. So what I did is I put this here, and this method is kind of interesting. I put this on the carriage right there so that it would, so that when I go across, so it trips twice. And it works surprisingly well, and it's thin enough that it doesn't trip the row counter twice. So it works really good for that. And then you could draw your pattern full scale. The problem with it is that if you do this method, you do have to knit at a pretty slow, deliberate speed. If you go too fast, it sometimes skips because it doesn't have enough time to get back in place to be tripped a second time. So you can decide, is it easier to draw my pattern half scale or to draw it full scale and trip it twice, just kind of making sure this trips twice every row. So that's up to you. And now, after I set this all up, I put the mast on and realized it's really not in a good place. This will hit it, and even if I move that down, it's kind of in blocking my vision, and then the yarn is going to be back there. So all I did was took it out and turned the machine over, and you've got the cutout that where you can put this little plastic thing. So I ended up just taking my Japanese screwdriver, and this is a screwdriver I always use with my knitting machines because it's slightly different than a Phillips, though a Phillips head would probably work, but I'll put a link for these Japanese screwdrivers. If you have a lot of different machines, they do come in handy, especially on the older ones where they maybe have like some corrosion. So then I just put it over here, and then I can take my mast, and and put it in that spot, so it ends up out of the way. So then I just I don't have the machine clamped down now, but I just figure out, like, if my ball of yarn is going to be here, then maybe it'll be okay. You probably want to move it down a little bit. You probably don't want to move it too far down. You want that kind of close to each other. And that way you're able to trip the row counter, this thing, and your mast is out of the way. So that's how you use the Brother Knitleader with the LK150, and this works on the KX350 as well. So give it a try. You may already have one of these. They're very easy to find on eBay, and they're generally not as much money as the silver reed versions. So give it a try and let me know how it goes. Thanks.